Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's January the 1st, 2015. Happy New Year. And this is Veterans Today Radio News Reports. I'm your host, Stu Webb. And we have, I have three separate guests here. I'm honored to have Gordon Duff on, Senior Editor of Veterans Today, first hour. Jim Dean, the Managing Editor of Veterans Today. And, of course, Dr. Preston James, an author on Veterans Today. So there's a lineup for tonight. And with that said, Gordon Duff, how are you this evening, sir?
Well, doing pretty good. This is the first day of the new year here, Eastern Standard, 8:01 p.m. So whatever bad anyone was going to start doing for the year, you should have started by now, or you'll be falling behind. So time to get those bad habits worked in. Wanted to look at a couple of things recently, and there are a lot of things we probably need to work on, I think. There are a lot of misconceptions and historical inaccuracies that people build on. One of the things I'm working at is to at least approach this next election with an aspect of reality. It looks as though we're going to be offered a choice between Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush, and I have people who are obsessed with Hillary Clinton and her murderous garrote attack. That's a little wider with a couple handles on it, when she nearly beheaded Vince Foster. I believe Hillary Clinton, from some stories, has murdered at least 200 people, stolen billions of dollars, while a high school student ran the world's drug business before her own birth. Helped start both World Wars I and II, mind you. And I have numerous witnesses, totally independent people, usually in the pay of the Zionists, or who work for what had been Richard Mellon Scaife, who is now thus far still dead. But we don't know if he's dead.
Didn't he meet Satan?
Satan called me up, told me to keep Scaife away from him. From what I hear, Scaife may have died. He may be living with Millman about 50 miles outside Havana right now. But, the kind of things that I just like to just get across here to some extent. Jeb Bush is probably the most evil son of a bitch on God's planet. He is... Without getting into conjecture, and there's so much conjecture about what people do. When we look at W, you can say these things, and I have access to more things than most do, that he was blackmailed into allowing 9/11. I have no evidence he was complicit. We do have new evidence that Cheney was complicit, but not Bush. But he knew it was coming, and he allowed it. And we don't know why he was blackmailed. I don't know. I've been told reliably he was blackmailed, that the Able Danger investigative team has in the report that President George W. Bush was being blackmailed. The only things that come to mind, I know that he's an alcoholic, that he was a longtime drug user. I have rumors about him using drugs at Camp David or not from people in the Secret Service, and I have no idea if they were telling the truth, because they're an awfully chatty and not very reliable group of people.
Well, I believe that
there's no reliability.
If I may, I believe Dan Rather kind of had it right when they got rid of him, because he was AWOL, and at the time, I understand he was in a dry out clinic when he was in military service, and he had a coke problem, cocaine.
But we've known that all along. Well, frankly, an awful lot of people went through the 80s drinking and snorting cocaine and having sex with people of the same sex. They're simply called gay. Now, I have fairly reliable information that Bush and most of those around him, the gang from Houston he hung out with, were gay. But there's a huge gay scene in Texas. There is no evidence that Bush had long-term relationships with adult gay men. over a number of years, people of some stature. I don't have any evidence of him having sex with children or murdering anybody, although we have evidence others in the family have very much done that, but not him. We do know that while in the military, is Vietnam considered wartime? If you consider Vietnam wartime, then he deserted. If Vietnam is not considered wartime, then he violated his National Guard contract and separated himself from service in an irregular way. Dodged the draft? Yeah. That's certainly true. Used his parents to do so? Yeah. Were people murdered to help cover that up? Maybe. Okay. That we know. With the family, and what do we know? I look at Hillary Clinton, and this is one of the things we've been, Stu and I have been doing over the last day or two, and that's involved grilling Chip Tatum, grilling others about this. And to a large extent, we are finding things said about Hillary Clinton. Here's what we deal with involving the Clintons and involving Obama. We wonder where they came from and how they got where they are. We know the people against them are the Bush family, and we know they're the most evil people on earth. There's no question. We can trace that, no conjecture at all. We can run Bush back to when he was chief of staff for Nixon. We have a family that was run by older brother Prescott Bush, who left Yale in 1943. To avoid the draft, he fled to Argentina, where he was employed by Pan Am. We have a story, and this is wild conjecture, but people love hearing it, so I'll hand that out to you, that he was sent as a young man to welcome Adolf Hitler when he arrived in Argentina. Do we have reason to believe that Hitler was in Argentina? Yes, we have reason to believe that Hitler lived to over 100 years old, was an art dealer in Buenos Aires, and died there. Do I believe that personally? I don't know. I think it's a fun story. I know Hitler could have gotten out. Do I believe he did? Yeah. Do I think that the bones found outside the Fuhrer bunker? And I've stood there in the apartment parking lot. There's a little sign in Berlin. I was there, I don't know, it's the middle of the winter anyway. There aren't even any vibes in the area, but the area is so sanitized, you can't really recognize any of it anymore. But there's a little housing project there and just a little sign saying that this is where Hitler was found. Do I believe he was found there? No. Do I believe anything that Stalin ever said? Absolutely not. As for why we're talking about this, we have people coming out of the woodwork with wild stories about Clinton and the Rose Law Firm and murders and how she's working for the Jews or hates all the Jews or whatever. And then I remember when she was First Lady, I remember her pushing for a medical system that those who don't like Obamacare would have loved the health care system that she had suggested. It was tremendous. And it was blocked. It would have saved lives, saved millions of dollars, would have put the U.S. forward many years. It would have been a tremendous thing for this country. And it was blocked by what she said was a conspiracy. The last time a major American leader had said something of a conspiracy was, well, John Kennedy. And lo and behold, not that long afterwards, her husband is impeached over an affair with Monica Lewinsky, who was working for the Mossad. Involved in this was Linda Tripp. Linda Tripp worked for a rogue group within Army intelligence. Her husband had been an Army intelligence officer. She was an Army intelligence operative, and a despicable Absolutely despicable human being. Leading the charge here was Hanoi John. If you don't like Karl Rove and you don't like Dick Cheney and you didn't like Adolf Hitler and you thought Stalin was bad and you're not so sure you like Benjamin Netanyahu, I'll tell you, all of those people are absolutely wonderful human beings compared to John McCain. Whatever you can say bad about someone, John McCain's a lot worse. Because I'll tell you, avoiding the draft or treason or whatever, at least Bush didn't go to Hanoi and train their gunners. He didn't go on the radio and make propaganda broadcasts. He didn't work to have American POWs murdered during the 1980s. And I have every reason to believe that U.S. POWs that were held in Southeast Asia were killed with the complicity of John McCain. And that is a general belief among the military, intelligence, and POW community. The families of POWs. It is a general widespread belief among people who know absolutely everything about this issue. And it's a decades-old belief. But back to Jeb. If Jeb is elected, here's what we've been told would happen. We were told that in Sandia Labs, a program was instituted some few years ago to study what it would take to destroy the American grid, the electrical grid. And by destroy, this would be to take down key areas, not power plants, but key switching areas that could take down the power grid for 36 months. That's the length of time it is believed that it would take to destroy the United States if power went down. Right out of the TV show, for those of you who haven't seen it, Jericho. You don't want to blow up inner cities. You could set a 5 megaton nuclear weapon off in downtown Detroit, and it'd be a week before anyone noticed anything negative going on. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I don't think any of you don't know what I'm talking about. Nobody cares. Nobody'd notice. I'd notice. I go down there periodically. I have friends down there, but no, nobody would care. Radiation, nobody'd notice anything at all. The Canadians would have their hair falling out after a while, but, frankly, they're only Canadians and we're not that concerned. But we have strong reason to believe from testimony from members of the Able Danger Investigation, members of the FBI, and members of the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, that a program was begun a little over 10 years ago. A study was made. Two things. One, what it would take to bring down the power grid. Two, how long the power grid would have to be down in order to take down and end the United States of America. And three, what kind of weapons would be necessary. The weapons that were chosen were two-stage nuclear weapons of the neutron variety that were designed to put out an EMP blast. 25 areas within the U.S. were selected. A map was put out. A design of the type of weapon was put out, and we had published this, I believe, back in July, the specifics of the design. And for any people that would like to catch up on what they didn't catch up on, to learn more about the documents that were leaked by Snowden and by the Los Alamos Group, they can go into the archives of Veterans Today under VT Nuclear Education, or read any of our 9/11 articles that were done by me or Jeff Smith from May 23rd till the end of September. And there will be about 20 articles there. We are not going to put those in book form. We may at some point, but if you go through the articles, you will find where we started in May as we began interrogating more people, reading more documents, talking to more physicists, when we got a hold of the supporting documents used by Dmitry Kolosov, a former nuclear intelligence officer, we began to readjust our estimates. We improved our information, and by September of 2014, we knew much more than the U.S. Department of Energy did about the nuclear attacks on 9/11 than they knew in 2003. We got considerably further because we had sources available they didn't have in 2003. We had more time and more personnel. They weren't given everything they needed. They knew on 9/12 it had been a nuclear attack. They were at ground zero. We have photographs of VT people with the IAEA and DOE at ground zero with Geiger counters taking soil samples. We have more than adequate proof. There's no question at all about it. We have the report. We have made some of it public. If you read the article I put up yesterday, all of the areas in quotes are from the IAEA DOE report. The documents that are up are supporting documents from that report. If you're wondering where the report is, you're reading it. This was a given. Now, one of the things I'd mentioned during our last radio broadcast, and we are waiting for the Russian news agencies to pick it up. One of the things we do, and call it a game, when we have stories to break, rather than just breaking them in Veterans Today, and I guess I could apologize if I'm not the most sensitive person in the world, but I know we have listeners who are influential people. I know we have some really brilliant people out there, and I appreciate that tremendously, by the way, over the years, and it's been a lot of years now. Listeners and readers have been a huge help and have done more to help the United States and other nations than they realize. We listen when people who know what they're doing come to us. We recognize who you are. When you have contributions to make, legitimate contributions to make, we get some crazy ones. Legitimate contributions, we use them. And I think those of you involved know we do, and you know you're appreciated. On the other hand, we are not living in a democracy. The CIA controls all American elections. We've got one. The only way we ended up with Obama is because his line of crap is so good. He won by over 20% twice. They couldn't fix that. Huge margins. How is he doing as president? My last tank of gas cost $1.69. Most of the kids have jobs, some underpaid. Mortgage rates are low. Housing prices are still down. That's wrong. Our industrial base is still suffering from the Reagan-Bush destruction. The U.S. still, whenever it speaks from the White House or elsewhere, sounds stupid as hell, but I can't do much about that. We are still taking part in the Federal Reserve, and Obama has never opened his mouth about it, and I wish he would. It is our belief that Clinton would have taken us out, Gore certainly, and it was getting close to that. That's one of the reasons that Clinton had worked to eliminate the deficits, because without the deficits, that's one of the differences between the U.S. and the EU. The U.S. can run huge deficits because of the Federal Reserve. The U.S. can use a totally ethereal currency with almost no negative effects. The U.S. can borrow and borrow and borrow, and then simply run interest rates to nothing and run the cost of debt to nothing. The U.S. economy is so huge, so incredible in size, that the U.S. can get away with pretty much murder at any given time. And because the U.S. is the American currency is the only world currency. There's a minor story here. The gang at VT and I were in Syria and Lebanon a few weeks ago. And For traveling, I mean, I've got a little box here sitting on my desk where I've got Swiss francs and pounds and euros in it. I empty the wallet when I get in and out of the country. And I took like 200 pounds with me and about 800 euros, a few Swiss francs, and about $1,000. And knowing that if I'm traveling with Harris and Hanky and Dean, you better have cash. And just we won't even get into that. But these are people. Last time one of them took a wallet out, a bat came out and attacked me. I mean, it's that kind of stuff. But we're in Beirut, and I'm flagging down a cab. I won't mention why this was, but we had a need to flag down a cab quickly to get out of a Hezbollah neighborhood. And I pulled out, I think, a 20 euro bill, which is enough in Lebanon to drive you halfway across the country. The guy nearly spit on the ground. He said, "Is that Syrian money?" I said, "No, that's a euro." Then he asked the next words, "What's a euro?" It's that money they use in Europe. "Oh, do you have any dollars?" I said, well, yeah, actually I do. Well, I'd be glad to take dollars. Okay. Well, if the euro is all that, that it's going to be the new currency, if the euro is all so powerful, if you're in Africa anywhere or the Middle East, if you're in Pakistan, you're in Syria, you're in Turkey, and Turkey is, almost like EU. And you pull a euro out of a wallet and you try to bargain with somebody to buy a basket or a pistol barrel or anything. Handing them toilet paper, which is apparently a new form of art, used toilet paper in Israel, but that's a story that we're not going to get into that, but that's something else. You might as well try giving them that. But the euro has no spendable value. And that's to the man on the street. In a bank, it's worse. It has no value outside the EU. You show up at a bank with a euro, it has no value. No one wants it in Dubai. No one wants it in Abu Dhabi and Qatar. No one wants it in Tehran. No one wants a euro. No one wants to see it. The EU is a house of cards. Back to my scurrilous attacks on Jeb Bush. We're being overrun with people who we believe are being sent out by organized crime to attack Hillary Clinton. And it is my belief, and I think my beliefs carry some kind of validity. As much as you love hearing these horrible things about Hillary Clinton or getting emails with her with satanic horns, how in the name of God could anyone say anything about Hillary Clinton, heaven forbid, whose only position, she was a senator and then Secretary of State, and in both cases didn't really do anything particularly bad, ever, although I think some of her decisions were precursors for our disaster in the Ukraine. And I guess I would probably list that there. But compared to a member of the Bush family, how do you remember Hillary Clinton when you've got a Bush there? And if you had, I can't imagine what Hillary could do to make her as bad as a Bush. She would have to dismember and eat a baby during the Easter egg hunt on the White House lawn to put herself even close to being a Bush family member.
Now, Bush families do eat babies, don't they? Bush family members do eat babies.
Well, she'd have to do that for us to think badly of her. It would. The point being is that Bush gets in, you're absolutely screwed. Now, if Hillary does have a list of 200 people or more, Larry Nichols was talking about this, she wants dead. If I'd like to see the list, if she's got a list of people she wants dead, let me see the list, because mine's got about 25,000 on it. So if her 200, if some of them are on my list, I want to know. I mean, we could be fast friends. I still think she's got, ankles the size of telephone poles. But unlike Barbara Bush, she at least never killed anybody with a car. Not that we know of, anyway. There's no way of telling. But if she's a murderer, or if she wants to murder a bunch of people, first of all, is murdering people all that bad? I mean, this is the United States. We're a nightmare of a country. This is a country full of people that need killing. And it's a problem here.
I know 12,000 plus that need to be taken out. I've been saying, do we give them Doc Preston James and I laugh about this. Is it the long rope, the short rope, or the wire rope? The wire takes the head off. The long rope snaps the neck. The short one, we get to sit and laugh at them for the next 5 to 7, 8, 10 minutes while they strangle to death. Do we give them the choice?
If you don't think, and it's a tough one here. We've just gone through Christmas. I can run short and nice here. It's late in New Year's. We can get mean again. There are some really, really bad people here. One of the things we could take a look at is the military. Now, Veterans Today is very much a veterans organization. We're the largest veterans news service in the United States / the world. The largest. There isn't even a second. No one comes close. We are certainly the people who take on the government most regarding veterans, although we are an official news outlet of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm a critic with the Department of and I'm a disabled veteran, 100% total and permanent combat disabled veteran. I know the game very, very well. I've been an activist, a veteran service officer for many years. Certainly understand it well. Probably something we should talk about more about American veterans and American military. I served in Vietnam. I was a Marine infantryman. I'm a combat veteran. I never defended the United States. Nothing done in Vietnam defended the United States. Do I think American veterans who served in Vietnam should be dishonored? No. Do I think if they claim they defended the United States, they're totally full of shit? Absolutely. I defended the United States in Vietnam. Really? Tell me how. What does shooting farmers have to do with defending the United States? What does it have to do defending the United States, putting a fascist dictatorship in charge of a country and just robbing it blind? And that's what we help people do. Everything we did in Vietnam was wrong. Everything. Now, if you were in a Marine rifle team or a rifle squad in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by people who are there to do you harm, and you had a weapon and you were shooting back at people, and in this case, I was one of that group doing that, I had absolutely no lack of clarity about the fact of continuing to shoot at people. On the other hand, sitting with a sniper rifle 400 yards from somebody, carrying a gun, going somewhere, and figuring that it was absolutely necessary for the security of the United States that I shoot somebody, that wasn't so clear. That didn't make any sense at all. And why is that? Because I'm not stupid and I'm not insane. On the other hand, I'm hearing this more and more. Honor, I defended my country in Iraq, Afghanistan. No, you didn't. You didn't defend your country. Instead, you took part in a war of aggression and war crimes on behalf of the U.S. Those people who acted honorably, who didn't shoot people from out car windows or torture people or any of those things like that. And Americans are awfully good people. So Americans loose in Afghanistan really would have helped kids and shared things and done the best they could. Most Americans do that. Many of you didn't. Those people who helped, those people who served on Bagram Air Force Base when Dr. Afia Siddiqui of the Central Intelligence Agency was sent there after being captured, after gathering evidence to prove that Dick Cheney was complicit in the theft of nuclear weapons and the planning of 9/11. And she was tortured for years to silence her and then stuffed away in an American prison. And if you were part of the people on that base who pretended you didn't know that compound was there, or that similar compounds exist in Britain, north of Oxford, or in Poland, or Bulgaria, Romania, in Egypt, Ethiopia, if you don't know those are there, and there are so many of them, or you're one of the people that, and we know how many people tortured people, or you're one of the people who believed that anyone defending their country in Afghanistan or Iraq needed to be killed by Americans because somehow they were involved in Al-Qaeda, stupidity is no excuse. Now, Americans are always too quick, and we always have been, to abandon our POWs and to treat our veterans like shit. We're very quick at doing that. There's a simple rule to this. Someone serves in the military at wartime and serves honorably. And honorably means they don't go out of their way to murder civilians, or in this case, clearly knowing that the United States is invariably wrong every time we send troops overseas. If you think you believe that the war on terror is real, or if you actually believe that Arabs attacked the World Trade Center, I can't fix that kind of stupid. And if you were involved in some kind of vengeful war against Islam, or a vengeful war defending the poor Jews from the evil Muslims, you probably belong in prison. You certainly didn't serve honorably. You certainly are a stain on the honor of the people of the United States. And I don't think that's the majority of veterans. But for all of you, none of you defended the United States. None of you. Did you defend yourselves and your friends? Yes. Were you at war and faced with difficult odds and challenges at times? Yes. Was there a fog of war where things just weren't so clear? Absolutely. Do I have a reason to damn any of you? No, I'm one of you. I'm absolutely one of you. Absolutely. I never defended the United States. I am a combat veteran. I never fought for this country. And I'm not entirely sure anybody alive today can ever claim they fought for this country. Not one person. As I look at things, World War II, when we talk about Pearl Harbor, and that was the clean war, and it's just so hard anymore. You know, we go back to Smedley Butler in the 1920s and 30s. I was a gangster for Wall Street. War is a racket. For those of us, and it's been a very long trail getting any kind of truth out of history, but World War II was a racket. The whole thing was a business. It was a racket. A lot of Americans, 500,000 Americans died. Americans went through horrific suffering, as did people from all over the world. Tens of millions died. There was no honor in any of it. The whole thing was a con job. Does that mean that there was no honor? Yeah, there was no honor. No one defended anybody's country. The whole thing was a con job. Yes. Should everyone have come back from the war and hunted down the people that started the war and killed all of them? Yes. Should we do that now? Frankly, yes. Yes, we should. Are all of the people who started the war on terror, who began selling it, who sold 9/11, the cheerleaders in the media, should they all be killed? I think they deserve to be killed. I don't think I'm not going to ever tell anyone to do it, but I believe they deserve to suffer. Do they deserve to die? Yeah, they do, because they're a threat to the safety of the people of the United States, and they are a clear and present danger to the survival of the United States. The members of the mainstream press are a threat to the United States. Key members of the U.S. Department of Energy, some of our nuclear commanders, many of the nuclear commanders and other members of the U.S. military that were removed for varying reasons over the last few. President Obama is removing members of the military. Yeah, he's removing drunks, philanderers, thieves, and traitors. Thank you very much. Is he doing it? Not really him. It's being done by organizations within the military that are only capable of acting to defend the honor of the United States because their freedom of action has been returned because the criminal Bush cabal is gone. And those of you who are crying because criminals are being punished. Other stuff I'd like to get at. Veterans Today has relationships with Press TV and Russia Today. And the Russian journal Neo, which is quite a publication. We enjoy working with them. Press TV's got two sections. It's got a broadcast section, and the broadcasters there I have considerable appreciation for. They're professionals. These are gutsy people. They're good to work with, and I like that. And if you watch any of my broadcasts, are not there, but I've got people I like working with. They're decent people. I like a lot of the people I work with in Iran. Things I do understand about Iran. Iran's a corrupt country. There's no reason to say it's not. Israel's corrupt. The U.S. is corrupt, extremely corrupt. Iran is corrupt. Iran has better leaders than it has had in a long time. And I am happy for the Iranian people. But there are people in Iran that don't understand the U.S., that hate the U.S. There are Americans and people from around Europe that run to Iran that hate our own countries. Americans that hate America, Europeans that hate their own nations that run to Iran for support, going crying home to mama. I don't respect those people. The Iranians get too close to those people and think the rest of us are like that. I'm not like that. I don't hate the United States. It's my country here. I like the Iranian people. I believe that the United States is wrong in how it is acting toward Iran, that the sanctions against Iran and Syria should immediately be lifted. If either country wants to have nuclear weapons, I don't care. Anybody wants to have nuclear weapons and is willing to pay the piper, you want to have them. You know, it's what's it? You screw with the eagle, you get the beak. You want to have nuclear weapons? You want to screw with the U.S.? I would leave the U.S. alone. You know, we're not harmless, and you know, if Iran wanted nuclear weapons, they can have them. I think they're not so stupid that they do. Iran needs to be able to develop a government of its own. The U.S. needs to stop fooling with them, stop fooling with Russia, stop playing the games it does with the Israelis and the Saudis. Frankly, stop the secret games we have in complicity with North Korea. And you don't even want me to go into that one. We'll start getting into the tinfoil hat area. But what you see going on and what is really going on is utterly unrelated. And I do this. Stu, how often do you and I talk about stuff?
We had a long chat today, and you set me straight on a lot of things. You gave me a history lesson that I had picked up on. I mean, little bits and pieces in the past, but man, did you set me straight. I wish they could teach this in every junior high and high school and elementary school in this country.
I'm a history teacher, yeah. And everything has to be put in context. And when you put things in context, in this case, we had to talk about the history of the Cold War, the CIA, the Galen organization after World War II, just so people would, so there'd be a basic understanding. We do not teach simple, and this is textbook history. It's not conspiracy theory stuff. But when you put things in some kind of timeline, into a functioning timeline, and there are TV shows that do this, mind you. You can go on the Discovery Channel, and a lot of this is done. But I do this all the time with Jim Dean and with Stu and with others, because when you look at some of the direction that the conspiracies head, and I love conspiracies like all of you, but they have to be rooted in reality. And what we do is one of the things we have taken on at VT, and this is a key issue, and I'm going to move the discussion this way. I had an email last week claiming to be from Ray McGovern. Ray McGovern is a former CIA analyst who worked for the CIA ostensibly from 1963 to maybe 1990. Okay, born in 1939. I do not know Ray McGovern. I worked for the CIA for part of this time. I was an operational person, not an analyst. I have worked in writing briefings for American presidents. Now, this was supposedly Ray's day job. I have written more than one presidential briefing on specific subjects that are within my expertise. One of the reasons Veterans Today exists is because we have the ability to put out credible intelligence. We have the sources that if I believe the CIA or military intelligence has given dangerously inaccurate intelligence to an American president, I will see to it that they get accurate intelligence. And we have done this on several occasions. Jim Dean, if he's hearing this, I don't know, can explain. But we've done this so that the United States makes decisions, informed decisions, based on real information. And I just simply put it out. Sometimes it'll be in articles that you'll read. But it's written for the President of the United States, and it goes to them. And on more than one occasion, policies have changed because we simply interfered with the ability that organized crime has to interfere with how the president is briefed. Now, this document that was claimed was from McGovern, and I don't necessarily believe it was, pointed out that McGovern was the presidential briefer from, let's say, through Reagan and Bush in particular. Now, I was around during much of that time. During that time, and this is one of the things that Chip Tatum and Stu were talking about today in another conversation, a parallel organization to the Central Intelligence Agency, when it was called the Enterprise. Is that right, Stu?
Yes, that's what he called it. Defined it as that,
yeah.
that the CIA went from being, from to its shadow government to the enterprise. Yes, organized crime.
All I can say is I was working in my office at one point as a medium-ranking U.S. government official, with lots and lots of education. A young, sprightly person with a 4-year-old son, and walked into the office one day and was simply, and I'll say flabbergasted, but no, didn't even wink, because you learn not to do that. Was simply told that I now worked for organized crime, and that my primary job, instead of tracking down stolen weapons and looking for foreign spies and bad guys like out of a TV show, was to help bring drugs into the United States and to help murder honest political leaders throughout Latin America and West Africa, and to rig elections on behalf of organized crime. And the day before, I was working for the U.S. government, and the day after, And this day we're talking about was in the first 2 weeks of the Reagan administration. It was pretty much told to everyone at the CIA that the CIA had just been acquired by organized crime and that it was our job to work for these people. And my proof was having a member of the Colombian cartel sitting in my office with a list of favors, all of which I'd list as felonies or treason or worse. And I didn't immediately jump on the phone and call Washington. Sat there quietly, yep, we'll take care of this for you. Sure, yep. Everybody's told me everything about it. Nobody told me anything. Nobody told anyone. And from that day forward, everything changed. The things that we found the footprints of people named North and Singlob. We saw the footprints of Prescott Bush. We saw the footprints of Khashoggi. We saw the footprints of a worldwide criminal organization that had hijacked much of the foreign policy function of the United States. Now, one of the things I pointed out to Stu earlier today is that, for intelligence operations, even then, however important Nicaragua and Cuba and Costa Rica and Honduras might be, or Colombia and Venezuela and Bolivia, Peru, that compared to the stations in Vienna or New York, where I would work part of the time, everybody worked in New York though, or Berlin, these were backwaters. Anybody working in those areas were second stringers. Raising hand, yes, I was a second stringer. That's who we were, that the big boys were all playing out there, and we were reminded that the guys that we worked with came out of that ran things, came out of the Galen organization. They were trained by the Germans. Only the Germans, at the end of World War II, the Germans understood the Soviets. They knew. They had the organizations inside there. We inherited those from them. We learned counterespionage. We learned to penetrate Russia from the Germans. We brought them in. They were our partners. They were our superiors, even those many years after World War II. And what went on there, the big war was in Europe, involved the Eastern Bloc. And we talked earlier about the treaty that kept Austria independent when the Russians moved out of Austria in 55 and 56, the Hungarian uprising, the 68 Prague Spring, the moves within Finland and the Baltics. We had talks about those things, and those, and these aren't necessarily germane, although I've got people out here who know a lot about these things. And just to let you know, we talk about these things, and these things are part of what goes on at VT, although they are, because I make sure that everyone has an historical background, that people aren't pulling things out of nowhere, that everyone has some sort of education or is rooted in some sort of reality. But while we're dealing with this, is that at that early point there, when Reagan came in, so if you were the presidential briefer in 1981 or 1982, and you didn't walk into the White House and said, well, drug shipments are up pretty much. Assassinations of priests, nuns, and other political union leaders and people involved in the free press are up about 80%. So we're doing well there. Drug revenue is certainly doing well. We're moving a lot of crack into the cities. We're ready to crash all of the savings and loans now. So that's doing very well. And we're rigging the stock markets more or less. We're opening the borders up. We're building the drug cartels within Mexico, and we're managing to take over key state governments and police departments within the U.S. So that's working well also. And within Washington, we're helping the Israeli lobby get control of the U.S. while the Soviet Union is effectively penetrating both the CIA and FBI very effectively, and that's certainly happening. And those things. So all of those operations to destroy the United States, to eliminate our jobs, to send our technologies to China, to give them our nuclear technologies. We're very successful at as we moved on into the 1990s. Yes, we've destroyed all control of our nuclear inventories so that hundreds of nuclear weapons and nuclear pits in particular are being removed from the United States and marketed around the world in order to cause destabilization. We're involved in an excellent operating program of systematic false flag terror to destroy the United States. The press of the United States is coming totally under foreign control through Murdoch, and the Republican Party is doing a great job of that. So President Reagan, and this is a presidential briefing. So if you're a briefer of the president and you're not telling him this stuff every day to President Reagan and President Bush, and those are the things that happened those years. And I could go day by day with these things. What exactly was somebody telling him? Or was somebody just making it all up, some kind of Pollyanna-ish crap? Because if you weren't telling someone that the United States was turning into a monstrous police state involved in false flag terrorism, drug running, and aggression around the world, well, you've done a great job. We've got Saddam ready to move into Kuwait. We're going to land on him. And yes, your brother Prescott has been moving precursors for germ warfare and poison gas through his partners in Germany. Plus, we've been building germ warfare labs and testing germ warfare in South Africa with Dr. Basson. We're still training Chechen terrorists against Russia, and we know that those people are going to be a strong basis for our operations against ourselves over the next few years, and they'll kill thousands of Americans. Operation Gladio is doing fine. We've blown up airports. We just murdered an Italian prime minister, kidnapped and killed Aldo Moro. That was the Americans that did that. We've just blown up a discotheque in Berlin and blamed it on the Libyans, and we did that as well. Are those the briefings that we were making? If we were giving briefings, real intelligence briefings, we'd be admitting to doing those things. And so if I'm wondering here, and I don't know that Ray McGovern's responsible for that silly email. I mean, he seems to be a guy with a lot of dignity. But was he giving these briefings? And if he wasn't giving those briefings, what briefings was he giving? And then this is years later, many, many years later. There's not much I can't talk about from then. I can't talk about people we tossed in the Lake Okeechobee, which we filled with so many people that I'm surprised it isn't overflowing, and it does overflow at times. But why doesn't someone ever talk about any of this other than Gwyneth Todd or Cybele Edmonds? They talk about it, or Susan Lindauer, she talks about it, or Jeff Smith, he talks about it, and there are others. And you've got a list out there, Stu, of people that'll talk. Why aren't these other people, why aren't they talking about these things?
Well,
what did they do? If they were what were they doing all these years? Because the U.S., all the U.S. was doing was killing our own people, training terrorists, and running drugs. That's all we were doing. We didn't do anything else. We were looting this country. We were turning this country over to financial pirates. When you talk about Mizell and Millman and looting the savings and loans, that was done by the Reagan government. That had international connotations on a massive basis. It destabilized this country economically. Wasn't somebody briefing President Reagan saying, well, we've almost bankrupted all of the savings and loans. We've just stolen $1.5 trillion. I see
Stay
we're
with
coming
us,
to an
Gordon.
end here.
No, stay with us. Jim Dean's on. I brought him on early for he could hear the last of this. You had a couple questions. Stick with us a few minutes, Gordon. And we're back, folks, as the Veterans Today Radio News reports. I'm your host, Stu Webb. It is January the 1st, 2014. I'm hearing an echo of myself here. And we're in the second hour, and Gordon Duff stayed with us. And, Gordon, I want you to pick up where you left off, sir, please. I mean, this is a history lesson I received today, and you've given a pretty good job of doing it here tonight.
Well, you know something, I think I was on a good roll here before the end of the hour, and it's and we were having fun in the process. And if you're having fun, yeah, you were getting a history lesson, and this is going to be put on YouTube, and it, heaven only knows I'd like to be able to edit this down to the things that you want to hear. You may not want to hear about Jeb Bush, or heaven only knows even I don't trust Hillary Clinton, but. And I am so resentful of the fact that who I'm being given to vote for, and
I'm voting for you, Gordon. We're going to make a draft, Gordon.
It maybe should come down to this, and I really don't want to do it, and it maybe should come down to this, and but it's going to take some money. I'm only willing to eat just so many babies and sell out so much to save the people of the United States. I will sell out some. The other hand is that crossing me at some point, if you don't think I'll have your head put on a stake, you're absolutely wrong, But I've got reasonable sense about whose head belongs on a stake, and you're going to have to trust me on that one. But
I love what you've said. The first thing you're going to do is arrest a Supreme Court justice after being sworn in, and arrest the entire Congress and Senate. It needs to be.
And yeah, and
the Bushes.
I got an email from Dick Eastman today, and it's called populism. Yeah, we're going to perp walk all these people. I'm not kidding. Not at all. I have a very good idea of how economy works. I do know how all this stuff works. I don't need, I have advisors. One of them right here is Jim Dean, and we have a lot of others. I don't mind having them. Preston James, another advisor. I have a lot of them, but I don't depend on them for a third grade education like the rest of the people running the country. One of the things about Bill Clinton is Bill Clinton was not an idiot. And I'm not seeing those signs entirely from Obama. He's not stupid like Bush was. But Clinton was not an idiot. He had some idea what was going on. And you cannot fix dumb. Toward this end, I'm going to be, I do my shameful plug here. Veterans Today sells custom weapons, and toward that end, we have most standard FFL weapons available. I can sell you a Glock pistol or whatever, but we build ultra high performance AR based, since that's all you can build out of spare parts. I like AK-47s as much as anyone else, but AR based 223, 300 blackout, and 308 rifles, and 308 semi-automatic pistols, which are the most powerful for the size animals on this earth. We're talking horrific weapons. Scary things that decent Americans who like collecting premium weapons, beautifully made, and not paying too much for them, actually. Very little, which I think is fair. People deserve to be able to get stuff cheap. We like making them. But we have these for sale. One of the things I put together this week, which was a bit of a pain, but I did a 7.5-inch 300 blackout pistol with a Generation 2 SIG-TAC brace. Those of you will know what it is. This will be a thing of beauty. It is very small. We just took out and tested it and ran 30 rounds through it in a second and a half. Throwing 3 feet of blue flame out the front of it out of a can. So anybody that wanted to do their own 4th of July or blast a large vehicle off a road should have this. I've got a number of 308, 223, and 300 blackout rifles and lots of other stuff for sale. But if you have an interest in that, come on to VT. We've got a custom weapons section, and most of these are available, and a lot of them can be shipped out in less than 24 hours, depending when you call. But we get stuff right out to you. We have custom optics and can configure anything with any extras you would want. We keep everything. I keep every imaginable stock and flashlight and optic of every kind. We keep a large inventory, tens of thousands of dollars worth of junk. And it's a hobby frankly, it's a hobby. And I like doing it. I'm sitting here. These are CAC flash cans, by the way, sitting on my desk. And a let's see, 9mm bullet and a 22,
yes, and not the usual paperweights on one's desk.
Yeah, and there's a buffer tube for a 300 pistol. Oh yeah, it gets better. This gets better. Here's a classic. I don't want to damage this. This was expensive. This is a bolt carrier group in nickel boron for an AR-10 308. That's that thing. I'm running the gas system in and out, sticking that back in the box. That's quite a piece of equipment. Not too easy to find. Make somebody a great long-range sniper rifle, or target rifle or whatever. Since I don't want any of you sniping one another out there, I want you to be good to each other for the most part. Anyway, I'm going to let this go to Jim Dean. Get off here. We had some fun today.
Before you go, you had said that Jim Dean could confirm something earlier in the show, and I drug him in early. He was kind of late, but thinking tomorrow night. Anyway, you were talking about something earlier, and I forgot, Gordon, what we said.
You mean you think I can remember something 20 minutes later?
Gordon.
I haven't been getting oxygen to my brain for years.
Okay, I'll fire a question at you. I was trying to get you on the phone just before the show, and because we had a talk earlier today, and we basically had to get off, and there was a last question when we were defining the different members of the crime syndicate.
I had to take the garbage out, is why.
Yeah, okay. We were discussing the different members of the crime syndicate, and I asked you, where Leonard Millman fit into all this? Can you define that, in your opinion, on the radio, or not?
And it's, I can't necessarily put this successfully in a context, but one of the things that's always forgotten when we're covering the rational end of things, where we're trying to make everything fit into something that TV watching people will get. Well, if you aren't watching horror movies, and when Stu comes out to the baby eating and satanic groups and the serial child molesters and all of this craziness, it's all very, very much real. And I just go back to my own relationship with Mellman, KeyBank, MDC Corporation, and I was involved in legal action involving a fraud against the Russian government, and I was representing Gazprom and a group of Russian manufacturers as their financial representatives, a decade or so ago, and which was part of my day job. And that's simple, legal case, hiring lots of lawyers. And it didn't take me long to find out. And I've been involved in litigation, corporate litigation, more than a few times in my life, that I was involved in litigation with organized crime. And that I might as well be in court with as Meyer Lansky, because that's what it had felt like. And on the other hand, I'm not entirely harmless. And anyone who mistakes me for someone that you can just walk right over. But I will tell you that this was a very powerful group, and that these people own the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Absolutely lock, stock, and barrel. They run the FBI. And that was made very clear to me. And I have lots of friends in the FBI, and I do not hate that organization or the people in it. I do not. I have great respect for them. But I do understand why some of them complain about the people they work for. And toward that end, I'm getting off. You've got great guests coming on.
And if you don't have one of Gordon's weapons, folks, get one. I like SCCY 9mm. It's fabulous. It fits right in the pocket. It shoots well. It's very
well. It's our idea here. Is we want all Americans armed with the best imaginable weapons possible, as inexpensively as possible. But I love weapons collectors. It's just I'm a collector, love building weapons, and this is our hobby. I've got Benjamin Fulford on here saying that Bill Clinton is the son of Winthrop Rockefeller. Jeb Bush is definitely now public enemy number one, very much. Benjamin's on with us right now. And Benjamin and I go through stuff because years ago, and I'm doing it, Benjamin, excuse me, I'm going to do this to you because I can't swear it's true, but a CIA director some years ago asked me to establish a relationship with Benjamin Fulford, intimating a relationship between Fulford and the CIA, which may or may not be real, and which Fulford says is not. But and Fulford is someone I admire. I love working with him. But he's on with us, and I advocate that people follow Benjamin Fulford and follow Michael Shrimpton. And Michael Shrimpton says some things that a lot of us don't often agree with, but some of my key sources at the highest levels, I do have key sources, and they aren't high-level people, but they're people who have access to every kind of information. But that with the inaccurate things Fulford gets, and he gets information I do not agree with, but Fulford's basic concepts, I am told, are very important. And according to the intelligence community, this is me blowing my own horn, so excuse this, the two most admired people in the intelligence community in the world are Michael Shrimpton and Gordon Duff. Of course, I'm not being sent to jail like Michael is, but and what I say is far more mainstream than what he says. And the question is, why is he so admired? And that's something we have to look at. And I'm going away now.
Gordon Duff, senior editor, Veterans Today. Thank you, sir. We call you Uncle Muscle and Juice now. You know that.
Yeah. Well, we'll get over that now.
Yeah, we'll get.
You guys have fun. I'm going to go watch some television.
Right. Well, they don't call him Uncle Gordy for nothing, you know.
That's right. And Jim Dean, you heard the last of what he said. He was talking about a history lesson. Gave everybody a history lesson tonight.
Good. Well, that's a good night. Here I am, half zonked out here, thinking it's Sunday night, and we're doing a Monday radio show when your call comes. So you had to reorient me to what day it was again. I mean, here you're pretty disoriented, folks, when it's New Year's Day, and you're just used to those coming on like a Sunday. It just felt like because I had a very Sunday-ish type day today.
Well, sometimes you need it, Jim.
Yeah, I did some different things, and I had some long talks and caught up with folks, so it kind of threw me off my regular work schedule. And I did not put my yellow stickum up on my monitor like I usually do to remind me about showtime, so that was my mistake.
It's not a problem. But you've got a lot to report on yourself.
Well, I'm just going to give folks a news rundown, because we had a kind of a special topic the other night, so I didn't get the news, but I'm going to kind of zip through. I've got 45 minutes left, so we should be able to get through 40 minutes. I was going to start with the shifting winds on the confrontation with Russia. There's some split developing, at least from the signs that we're seeing, which are clear, that the EU definitely wants to try to get Ukraine resolved so they can get the sanctions resolved. And again, these are usually signaled with high position people speaking out. And of course, the the EU foreign policy chief is about as high a source as you can get when it comes to shifts. But here's some of the things that she said earlier in the week about kind of signaling with a flashing red light that they intend to have a change in downsizing this Russian confrontation. Quote, "We need to engage with Russia to help solve not only the Ukraine mess, but several others." Now, that's a very unusual statement when you're focused on one problem. You usually don't want to bring others in it. But she was really acknowledging that Russia's help needs to be brought for the Mideast situation, for the Palestinian situation, for Syria, for Iran, and of course, and that's a split with the U.S. because the U.S. is kind of trying to stiff arm Russia out of playing a role in any of these things. They give them lip service. But they don't really want them horning in on the Palestinian peace process, which, of course, they are a little bit because the U.S. Track record there has just been absolutely horrible, despite all of the weapons and all the financial leverage, that they never bring any of that to bear to change Israel's attitude because of our compromised position in Congress. So, and that's part of why this is going on and on and on and on, because so much of America is blackmailed or bought off by the Israel lobby that even the president is under siege in a lot of ways with what he can do. But she went on to bring up the money issue again. So if anyone was wondering what her concerns were, quote, "Trade between Russia and Europe is declining, but it's going up with the U.S." So that was a very unusual thing, very strong comment for her to say that, the U.S. is, they love this confrontation because it's not costing the U.S. anything. And we had a German MP a week or so ago. I saw the video with the English captions on it, and she really took Merkel to the woodshed, basically accused her of disloyalty, of serving American interest at the cost of her own constituents. And again, she brought up the same thing with the sanctions, that they do not hurt the U.S. at all. And the U.S. really pushed European countries to go strong on these sanctions. And they did it even though, their people were the ones that are going to be paid for it. And she just went on and on and on. And Merkel's face was just cold as stone. She's somebody that's gotten a lot of a lot of heat, so it doesn't really bother her. And then she closed. She said, "Everyone needs to get out of the logic of confrontation." Now, those are three really extraordinary quotes, basically saying that we, the major powers of the world, we're not able to solve these. We got all of these problems, and we need some help. And that's not usually something you see a world power do, particularly with someone that they're attacking and been trying to make a boogeyman out of. And then she admits that publicly, what everybody knows, that their own people, that the policy has hurt their own. Sure, it's hurt the Russians, but it's also hurt the European population, but not hurt the Americans. And then basically, she's declaring the policy a failure. The policy of confrontation has failed, and it's hurt us. It's hurt our economies even worse at the bad time. And of course, no word from the U.S. on that at all. And then, of course, your Austrian Prime Minister Fischer, he's been coming out against the sanction policy completely. So the sanctions they have in place are due to expire in March. So they're already sending signals now that everybody, when March comes, everybody wants to make sure as hell that there's not going to be any renewing or anything like that. And they're starting to do what the people in America do, and that's start fighting back and putting the heat on them. So they're sending signals to the U.S. that they're not going to take the European, they're not going to take the financial heat, and they're not going to take the political heat from their own public, because they've got a thing brewing up here. You're going to have a big financial battle because the Russians, with their currency down, they have $150 billion in EU bank loans that have to be paid, or typically they would be rolled over. So with the ruble down 50%, they in effect would have to pay, what would affect for them, they would have to pay $300 billion to pay that 150 off, because the sanctions have blocked them from getting refinancing, which basically cut their roller off. And of course, that's one of the reasons the U.S. put in that, because they knew if they could drag this out to where all these loans have to be being rolled over, that they've created a crisis. But what part of that crisis can be is I don't think we're going to see the Russians trying to go out and sell, buy $150 billion of EUs by dumping a lot of rubles, because that'll just drive the ruble down even further. And what somebody started floating in Russia is that, if the West really thinks they're going to muscle Russia, Russia's got the perfect poison pill, and that is they'll just default on the loans.
Russian Putin's no one to mess with. I mean, the guy's a brilliant guy, and he's a strong leader. I have a lot of respect for him myself, Jim.
Well, they're standing up. He's got an 81% approval rating. Here you got Obama, stupid people advising him. He's crowing about how the sanctions have brought the Russian economy to its knees, which it hasn't. It's hurt, but they're still functioning. They're still paying all of their social costs. Sure, they've had to make some adjustments, but see, the Russian people, he's not figuring them in. They basically see this clearly as an economic war, and the Russians are used to fighting a war with the West, and they know about encirclement, and they also know that the way you resist that is with unity, and that's what they've got. 81%. There's no leader anywhere on the planet that could get an 81% standing. So I would tell Obama's advisors is that we're not that stupid, that these talking points that you're giving Obama to say, they're just an embarrassment, because you're leaving out that the people are really behind them, despite all of the money you're spending on NGOs and in the opposition there. The Russian people are going to stand together, and they can drop the bomb. They have, in terms of getting other funding, they've got the Chinese bank, the currency thing that they were doing. They've already started a new type of SWIFT system that's starting out. They've got their own credit card system that's coming. So in the future, the tools that they've used now, they're not going to be able to use again. But if push comes to shove, they just won't pay. And then it's not going to be the U.S. banks that are going to be collapsing. It'll be the European. And of course, when the European banking system collapses, because that's so tied to the dollar, guess who gets dragged into that? Guess whose taxpayers have to pump out. Let's see, the last time something happened, how much was it, Stu? They pumped into the European banking system $16 trillion of liquidity to hold off runs on the banks.
Yep. More than that, actually.
Yep.
A ton of hidden money that they pump in. But this Ukraine problem with Russia comes down to the dual citizens of Israel. That's where most of these so-called Israelites came from, was Russia and from the Ukraine. You're aware
right?
of that, aren't you?
They're from their old genetic pool. Uh, so the bankers know this, and the Russians were kind of sending a signal of letting folks know that you know you're not going to get this. And then you started hearing within the following week more and more politicians coming out saying that the sanctions policy is self-defeating, and they all and much more. Sure, it's hurting the Russian people, but it's also hurting our own people. So we don't consider that a really successful policy. So part of the anchor is there's pressure now to try to get Ukraine solved. In fact, even the French today, they put out a little news on the Mistral, the helicopter ship that they've been holding up delivery on. And they even said, and I was surprised, they said, everybody should kind of chill out about what's going to happen with the delivery of the Mistral. Because they said when the Ukraine situation gets resolved, which we think it will be, it's just going to be delivered. So it's not a question because they've already said that's kind of what it was. The French had agreed not to turn it over, to use that as part of a ploy. But then again, that's a fake ploy because they will, if they don't give delivery, France will owe more than the cost of this helicopter landing ship, and which they don't have the money for. And it's already come out that NATO doesn't have the money for it either. NATO doesn't need it because NATO doesn't have any equipment. The NATO nations supply all the equipment. There's no equipment funding pool for NATO. And then also because it's been built to be used in Russia, for something to be used for NATO, they would have to go through and change out all the instrumentation. So they put the kibosh on thinking that, France would have to take the hit. And then everybody's saying, we're not going to chip in and bail France out on this. So that's also that Mistral thing has become a tar baby. And of course, this is the U.S. and then Britain was also leaning on France heavily not to deliver it. And it's not really a big strategic ship. It's a type of ship that they can use in the Kuril Islands with Japan. They're having some disputes there with Japan, and it gives them the ability to land moderate armor forces and troops quickly, lots of helicopters if there's a dispute there. And then also with some of the work they're going to be doing up in the Arctic with the oil and stuff like that, they want to be able to move small amounts of troops quickly. And then, of course, they're also getting at it, which I think they're going to do anyway. They're going to build their own from now. They've got shipyards that actually can do it. A lot of these arms contracts and stuff, part of what they were doing is trying to buy goods from industries from customers that were buying their energy. Just part of good trade relations that you spend a lot of money to buy our energy, and we would like to turn around, although we can build these things ourselves, we would like to spend some of the money that you give us, send it back to you. So we have a kind of a balanced trade. And this is even when the EU had $110 billion trade surplus with Russia. This was something Russia kind of engaged in because they thought it would protect the EU from the US being able to get the EU being aggressive. But of course, NATO has been marching eastward anyway. So that's the Russian news. Gonna move on. Iraq situation. The Army has steady momentum going on now with rolling up ISIL. They have a combination of they're bringing together their superior firepower, better tactics, and they've got air support. So they've been able to do a town after town, and they're rolling up ISIL and also doing a lot of damage. They had a failed policy in the beginning, a weak policy of just trying to push them out rather than killing them, and pushing them out stupid because then they just go and attack another town. and then they're more angry. They execute and torture and kill more people. So letting them get away in all of these towns, once you get them out of town, you've got them out in the open. And we still don't understand why they're not using aerial surveillance and their 155 howitzers that have ranges, I think, of 60 kilometers. A battery of those can blanket an area of a square mile in about 3.5 minutes. Can destroy anything within a square mile like that. But so the momentum there is ISIL is now starting to get worn down. Moving on to Palestine, of course, they had the draft resolution go before the Security Council. It did not pass. You had abstentions, and then you had the U.S. able to muscle some of the small countries to vote against it. So it did not get the 9 votes. And any ideas that Obama might try to shake Israel up by voting against it, that did not happen. So that went down. But all is, and Israel's very happy about that. But all is not lost, because now Abbas came back and he held an ace in his card. He said, okay, now that you've done that, we've asked for recognition, and the same old bloc that does not want us to have it has said no. He's initiated membership to the ICC, which is something that also Israel hates. And he doesn't need Security Council permission to do that. And of course, as soon as they're brought in, which they will be able to file charges against Israel, government people, because there's no immunity, technically, for war crimes. And the Israelis, of course, will stiff-arm that, but that will put them in a bad light, because the more they're in the spotlight telling everybody to go to hell, we don't have to obey any of your laws, any of your international norms and whatever. The U.S. has got our back. Nobody's going to attack us. That helps build up the sanctions, the more countries passing resolutions, and building what really needs to be done to change the things, and that is a boycott, and I would even a boycott of Israel and even a blockade. Israel needs a complete economic blockade, and I'm more than just solving the press. They need Israel. The danger of Israel in the Mideast will never be eliminated. It needs to get the Japan treatment. It needs to be demilitarized, and all of its weapons of mass destruction. Syria was nowhere near a threat with any of their stuff that Israel is. And we need to kind of focus now. We have to start increasing demands. Every time Israel basically laughs and sneers and whatever, you just start increasing the demands of what you want. And people have to get behind this. And then everybody that's protecting Israel has to pay the biggest political, you got to keep increasing the political cost on that. So that's Palestine. The flip side of Obama is while he was, basically claiming victory or bringing Russia to its knees, he puts an olive leaf branch out to Iran. And he says, kind of validates something that everybody's been talking about and knows, but Iran will become a very successful regional power. It has incredible talent and resources and sophistication. So that was kind of a carrot and stick type of situation, because they're trying to, Obama has to protect himself from charges that he sold out. He gave the store away to the Iranians, and he has to try to maintain a deal that he can kind of say he can take back, so that claims that the Iranians are going to trick us and they're going to start up and they got secret programs going on. They've got a caveat. Well, yeah, but if we can find those and validate those, then we can put the sanctions back on, or we have sanctions that are going to be removed on the deferral program. And if we see any of that, we will not remove those referrals. Now, that's a very tough sale for the Iranians because that's basically like putting them in a timeout box. And then, of course, they know that the person will make the determination whether they're in compliance or not. If it's a Republican administration and they went in 2016, you can imagine how objective a thing you're going to get there. So they're not going to hand their head. So I think that's going to be a real problem. So I think what he was trying to say to Iran is, although, sure, leaving some sanctions on may be a little bit of a problem, but if you're getting opened up, you'll be able to counter that with all of the business that you're going to be able to be bringing in. Now, of course, and the other thing, although people beat up on Obama, no one more than us, and the crazy, stupid policy in Syria, and then also against Russia and Ukraine. He's really pissed the Israelis off. They hate his guts for what he's done on Iran here. And the Saudis are not very happy also, because the Saudis, to tell the Saudis that Iran's going to be a great regional power, the Saudis know what that means. Is they're not even going to have the economic muscle, even with all of their money. They don't have the industrial base, they don't have the people, and Iran's going to have a very, very competent military. It's already got one now in terms of defense, but they're doing way more. Saudis have to buy all of their stuff, but Iran's making it. So they're really going to eclipse Saudi Arabia in terms of who the regional power is.
Well, they produce, what is it, about a fourth of the oil supply, 1/4 of the world oil supply?
Yep, and they've got that. And then, of course, they're not making a lot of friends in certain places with their participation in crashing the oil markets. But of course, there's other people involved with that.
The crime syndicate to try to put the squeeze on the economies. Now we've got future relations now with, as a result of your trip to Syria, we will have soon Syria as one of our partners. Should we say one of our allies?
Yep, at some point, because of course we've advised that all this talk about defeating ISIL and putting a dent in this jihadi stuff. Number one, just from a tactical point of view, without working closely and jointly with the Syrian army, I mean it's just a joke. I mean militarily, it's a joke, and they're really just lying. It's a bold-faced lie to the public, and because you're going to have boots on the ground, and the only boots on the ground you really got is the Syrian army. So it's stupid to be having them fight the Free Syrian Army and tying them up. They're actually helping ISIL when they do that.
ISIL is John McCain and General Valley.
Yeah, and then of course we got that problem. Oh yes, Western sponsored in Turkey, NATO allies, up to their eyeballs, and more than a few NATO countries where all of these jihadis seem to have absolutely no problem traveling. You hear France, you hear Germany, you hear Britain talking about the numbers. They have a count of the number of people that they think they're there. Well, that obviously means that they have their names, which obviously means they have their passport numbers. And if they do, well, why in the hell have they not put all their passport numbers to basically be held any time that they try to pass a border and brought in for questioning? And you don't see any of that happening almost anywhere unless they've got some eyewitness type thing. Now, of course, they're claiming that there's some legal issues with that, and that's baloney. Under the terrorism laws, you can grab people for suspicion and hold them for questioning, and if they can't give an accounting of where they've been and that checks out or whatever, they can be held for suspicion of terrorism. So they actually have kind of lied when they said that there's legal problems to it whatsoever, because they're holding people, heaven knows, with all the rendition problem after we found they didn't have any problem at all holding people. And same with Guantanamo. They don't have any problem holding people with no charge if they're deemed a security threat.
I say we arrest the head of ISIS, John McCain.
Yeah, we got them. So they've got a little bit of a little lead of the pot calling the kettle black there. A little miscellaneous stuff. You had Britain here trying to do a rah-rah rally of the flag with all the bad news that they've got. Of course, their oil business, they're starting to lay off thousands of people because their cash flow is down. And so all of the projected improvements, maintenance, trying to increase production or whatever, all of that is having to be postponed because they spend the money as fast as it comes in, and with a lower price, they've got a hell of a lot less coming in. So they've had to make cutbacks right away. So that's going on. But so as a little diversion, which you always see them having, they came up with made this big deal. The Russians obviously are an arms exporter, and I think they're selling about a dozen of the Su-24 planes to Argentina. Which probably, doesn't have any state-of-the-art fighter bombers. So now all of a sudden, and of course, Argentina is a big enough country, a dozen state-of-the-art fighter bombers. I don't think that's a huge military force that's going to threaten the West very much. But the Brits have really jumped on that. He said, oh, they're going to be able, those things can be able to make flights out to the Malvinas. Well, yeah. Well, so what? So what are they just because they've got planes? It means they're going to bomb the Malvinas and get into a whole thing, and and for what? They haven't found any oil there. It's not like the South China Sea, with China with a huge appetite for any energy that's close within their borders to be able to get their hands on it. There's nothing like that going on with the Malvinas. It's really not a place for a base. So it's another case of a government trying to use a fake threat situation to just get the publics off their mind and say, hey, we're all going to be British and let's work together. The classic old hyped up confrontation to try to get people's minds off things. So boo on the cheap British politicians in the media, and I don't know whether any of the media there basically skewer the government for putting that hype crap out there.
Well, the politicians in Britain are as bad as the ones in America. About 5% of them are either baby eaters or they've had sex with kids.
Well, it's almost like they have a similar group of advisors, advising them in the same tactics all over the place, and there's a lot of people that are in this business, a lot of them very friendly with the Israelis, and they seem to be advising people all over the world on how to do stuff like this, how to control your populations just like they do in Israel.
And to control your politicians, let them become baby eaters or have sex with kids.
There you go. I'm going to circle back.
Friggin' place, Jim.
Yeah.
I'm ready to help go physically clean it up. All I need is someone to say, hey, we're back, you stew. First one I want to put in handcuffs is the crime syndicate here in America. The second, I want to get Bibi Netanyahu. This whole Likud government. But that's beside the point. That's me. I want to get physical, We
will help so. We'll hope so. I'm going to circle back. I'm going to kind of wrap up with some source stuff. I want to kind of share with the readers a little more intimately how we're able to get some of this. I've been spending some time with someone born in Russia, very close relatives in Ukraine and whatever. In fact, she's actually moving back to the area. So it's actually been packing up. And she's going to be on the ground there for us, and hopefully in January. But I was getting an update on her. I had asked her, I said, can you give me a good briefing, talk to your people, and let me know what's going on politically on the ground in Ukraine? Because I said, I would imagine everybody there wants to fight to get some kind of government power so they can steal the money rather than someone else doing it. So I had anticipated there's some junkyard dog stuff going on. And she did confirm that. What she came back with, particularly with the president. There's a move now, even though Poroshenko and Yatsenyuk, formed a coalition government because they got fairly equal votes. Poroshenko was a few points ahead. It appears that Yatsenyuk and his folks and Julia Timoshenko, they want to get rid of Poroshenko. So they have a variety of things going on. Yatsenyuk is working with one of the big co-owners of the TV channel, and they're using the defense minister Avakov is in with them also, but they're going to start slamming. They're going to do a PR anti-propaganda campaign on Poroshenko. So they're going to go after him, and they're also they've got that going. And the main thing they're going to do is, and they want a bigger war. They're going to accuse the president of being a delay in the military conflict in Donbass. In other words, they still have a faction there. They want to go in and finish those people off. And then also, there's a lot of opposition for him bringing in these foreign people to take some of the top jobs in the government. And of course, what was not published over here is one of his justifications for that was, guess what?
What?
Well, we've got to have people in these top positions that won't steal everything. And, we look around and we just can't find anybody that we can see that won't steal everything. So we have to bring foreigners in, or somebody like George Soros and put him in charge of the banking divisions and whatever, because he's already got a lot of money. He doesn't need to steal ours. So
go ahead, Jim. We've got Dr. Preston James on with us too. And
okay. Well, listen, that's right. I was thinking I was doing half hour, but that's right. He's got time, and we're at 15 minutes left. So I can finish up with this Monday night, but I don't want to.
Doc, are you there? I want to make sure we've got him on.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, great. You got questions for Jim Dean?
A lot of them. I take about 3 hours to get the information I like out of them. Yeah, it's a good job. It just sounds like all these tough sanctions from the United States State Department, Victoria Noodle and stuff are sort of evaporating as the Europeans are starting to get real about their needs for energy at a reasonable price from Russia.
Yep, and also they don't want to be the tail on the American dog, because that's not going to flow too well with their public over there. But I'm going to let Preston have the last part of the show, because so the public gets to hear all three of us tonight, and I will see you guys tomorrow, Monday night.
Okay, sounds
right.
Good. Thank you, Jim, very much. Jim
Good,
Dean, managing editor, Veterans Today, folks. Read his stuff. Doc, what do you got to report?
Well, just basically, there's still a lot of fallout from the effects of the top VT directors, that went to Damascus for this counterterrorism conference, December 1st and 2nd, 2014. It sent tremendous shockwaves around the world, but it's not just a one-time thing. There's continuing shockwaves because there's all kinds of internal discussions within the intelligence agencies that have gone over the briefings that were done there. Gordon Duff gave an historic speech, a keynote address, but that was only really part of the VT program because Colonel Jim Hankey was there, and I guess his briefing was outstanding. And I don't have the details. I hope we get them. Jim Dean's, of course, gave many interviews and was on Syrian TV repeatedly, and we know Mike Harris gave at least 25 interviews that were all over Syrian TV. Now, these reports all went to the top intel people and top administration officials all around the world, in almost every major government. And they were there within 24 to 48 hours. These reports, they have set off a tremendous reaction. For the first time in history, Gordon Duff publicly identified the fact that let's not mess around anymore. Let's talk about what international terrorism really is. And he identified it not as terrorism as such, but as an organized crime problem, a multifaceted organized crime problem. And we have to go to the root cause, and that root cause is organized crime. Veterans Today is going to be documenting what this problem is, who's been doing it, who the top players are. All this in the following weeks and months will be coming out on Veterans Today. It's Gordon reported a really shocking story. It really caught me off guard. The fact that Anonymous, which has some of the best hackers in the world, we know now that some of the hackers out there that are independent and some are patriots are better than anybody in NSA or even China or Russia. Some of the young independent people are unbelievably skilled, and they can crack anything, and they're going to crack anything, and they have a mission to end all secrecy. Well, now we get the word, and this is from a reliable source, more than one source, that they have hacked into the Mossad, have all their records, and 30,000 names, addresses, pictures, different identities of their top agents and assets all around the world, including inside the United States, inside England, inside France, in every major country of the world. This is a very, very shocking disclosure. It's going to be made public probably in a number of places. It's probably going to be plastered all over the internet, and Veterans Day probably will get it. But we know even beyond that, the shock waves that came out from the conference, we know that now within many of the intelligence agencies, based on the information that Gordon Duff, Jim Hankey, Mike Harris, and Jim Dean communicated, we know now that many of them are planning very, very sophisticated counterinsurgencies against the organized crime cabal. And they're now that they know who the enemy is, they're going to take steps to deal with it. And these are exciting times. But we did get news that Gordon Duff has written another blockbuster article. He's had so many lately. This one is going to send just as many shockwaves around the world as his speech in Damascus, and apparently it's going to be published within the next week or so. First in the I guess a Russian publication, and then it will be in VT. So, that's going to really be something, Stu. But
now that's going to be dealing with the fact that Dick Cheney was complicit in 9/11 and others, including Giuliani and the police chief of New York, Curry, and others. And they have the proof and evidence.
Right. Well, but I guess this report is going to be incredible. That it's going to be far-reaching. It's going to lay things on specific bits here. The whole chain of command. Isn't that what Gordon said? That this is going to send shockwaves. This could drive the story actually into the mainstream media. This one alone. So, but you know that the world's catching on to the crime syndicate. And the crime syndicate cannot last with the power that they've had classically unless they operate in complete secrecy, complete silence. You know that, Stu.
I know that. And that's where we got to get our people listening to this show and others to start passing these articles to everybody on the internet.
But you know that basically you and I have a little slight difference with the top guys at VT, because this is written basically for intel people. To start with, it was special forces, and then intel. These are this journal was written for some of the highest intel people, in the United States and in other countries. This is not for babies. And so, I know that some of the principals don't care if anybody else reads it or not, and really don't care about dealing with the public. This is written for the top government policymakers and to inform people at a very high level. And we know it's used for that. We know that the people that read this are very high level. But you and I, of course, we believe that everybody should have access to the truth. Gordon Duff believes that too. It's not a priority, I don't think, but he allows this, and he doesn't try to tell the writers what to write or publish. There's no controls. And but you and I want to push this wide and near, because I personally believe that the American people can handle this and will do something with it. And I think you do too. So it's up to us, and that's where you've got truth warriors working on this, some really good people pushing this, and I hope people pick us up. But I can assure you, Stu, that the shockwaves coming from VT are incredible. They're being heard around the world. They're not going to stop, and the more information that's released, the more the crime cabal will be exposed and weakened. And we know who the principal players are, but let's just be right up front about it here. The problem with ISIS, it's not a problem of terrorism. It's a problem of organized crime. That this is a private mercenary army. It's synthetic terrorism. It was built by Senator McCain, Senator Vallely, and General McNerney. And there's rumors that General Petraeus left big, large weapon caches behind in Iraq that, for these people to be immediately armed. And of course, they were able to access funds by robbing banks and doing whatever, but their purpose for being there is to destabilize the area, apparently for the crime cabal, and then asset strip. This is their game, whether it's oil or minerals or whatever, drugs, whatever. But the bottom line is, this is a criminal operation. It's going to be exposed. The people in the United States that are involved in this, a small cabal in our army, the Bush crime cabal, the International Zionist Crime Syndicate, and by the way, as you know, Stu, most of the Zionists are Teutonic Zionists. They're not Israelis at all. Many of them pretend to have Jewish ancestry or Hebrew blood. They do not.
And I might add to that, I have curiosity on how many of these Israeli spies that when these names are released in emails and their pictures and all that turn up to be pulpit-goons, so-called Christian ministers in this country.
We already know that. We've known that for years. Some of them have been, but the other problem is they take like the police chiefs and the people take the junkets to Israel. They get the Kool-Aid. We've even had reports where little white tubes come through the wall and a little puff of gas, and then guys in white suits come in and hook them up to IVs and stuff. And from that point on, when they hear the magic tone over the telephone, they start worshiping Israel. Israel can do no wrong. We know that goes on.
Yeah, the Antichrist is here. Headquarters, Jerusalem.
Well,
we're out of time. And with that said, folks, I want to thank Dr. Preston, James, Gordon, Duff, Jim Dean. Thank you, Doc, very much. And folks, this radio is listener supported. Come in and support the radio station and check out the products on the front page and Revolution Radio here and help support us, keep us on the air. Thank you very much. Thank you, Doc.
You betcha, Stu. Take it easy.